What makes riding around Silver City and the greater Owyhee region so special isn't just the incredible terrain. Though these high mountain trails through forests and across exposed ridgelines are absolutely world-class, it's the knowledge that every path I follow was carved by someone with a story. Stagecoach routes that carried fortune seekers and their gold, leaving ruts still visible in the hard-pan desert. Wagon trails worn by families seeking new lives, their iron wheel rims cutting grooves that persist 150 years later. Cattle trails used by ranchers driving herds to market, following the most efficient routes through the mountains. Paths followed by Native Americans for thousands of years before any of this began, connecting sacred sites and seasonal camps in a network of knowledge we've barely begun to understand. I often stop my bike at certain vantage points and just listen. The wind through the pines at this altitude has a different quality, thinner, sharper, carrying sounds farther. Sometimes I swear I can hear echoes of the past, the creak of wagon wheels, the jingle of spurs, the distant sound of picks striking rock, the war cries of battles fought over landscape that looks unchanged from when the world was young. The Oregon Trail's South Alternate Route, often called the Dry Route, snaked through Owyhee County and was known for being shorter but considerably harder and more perilous than other sections. Following portions of this route on my bike, I'm struck by the sheer determination it took for families to cross this landscape with everything they owned loaded into wagons, facing constant dangers from weather, terrain, and hostile encounters. Maybe other riders just live in the moment when they're out here, focused solely on the technical challenge of the trail or the pure joy of speed and freedom. But for me, places like Silver City and the broader Owyhee region demand a different kind of attention. This land is layered with stories, soaked in the raw emotions of human ambition, desperation, and dreams.
The engine of my dirt bike cuts through the thin mountain air at 9,000 feet, and I can't help but wonder if I'm the only one who feels them, the echoes of the past that seem to whisper through these ancient trails. As I navigate the rugged paths around Silver City, Idaho, just miles from the Oregon border, I often find myself pausing, not just to catch my breath in the altitude, but to absorb the weight of history beneath my wheels. The first time someone asked me how a patch of high Idaho desert came to bear the name of a tropical paradise, I thought they were pulling my leg. Owyhee? Like Hawaii? But there I was, throttling down my bike beside a weathered historical marker, staring at an explanation that promised answers I wasn't sure I wanted to find. Most riders, I imagine, come here for the pure adrenaline rush, and I understand that. There's something magical about these high mountain trails that rivals even the sand dunes for sheer riding perfection. But for me, Silver City and the greater Owyhee country offers something deeper. Every rut in the trail, every rocky outcrop, every wind-swept ridge carries the stories of those who came before. I'm not just riding modern ATV trails. I'm following paths carved by stagecoaches, worn smooth by the boots of desperate miners, and traveled by Native Americans for thousands of years before gold fever ever struck these mountains. You have to understand the raw brutality of this place to appreciate its ghosts. Owyhee County sprawls across 7,697 square miles of high desert, larger than Connecticut, more desolate than Mars. When I first rode the winding mountain roads that lead to Silver City, the landscape seemed to shift and breathe around me like a living thing. Ancient volcanic forces had painted the canyons in impossible colors, vermilion bleeding into chocolate brown, sulfur yellow blazing against emerald green. Standing at War Eagle Mountain after a particularly challenging climb, my bike ticking as it cooled in the thin air, I could see for 100 miles in every direction. The silence was so complete it had weight, broken only by the distant cry of a hawk and the whisper of wind through the pines. In the deepest canyons below, there are places no human eye has ever seen, gorges so remote and treacherous that they remain as wild today as they were 65 million years ago, when the first volcanic eruptions began sculpting this alien landscape. I picked up a thunder egg from the gravel at my feet, Idaho's state rock, perfectly spherical and hiding crystals within its rough exterior. Like Owyhee itself, beauty and violence were married in its formation. The Shoshone and Paiute had gathered these treasures for thousands of years, along with obsidian sharper than surgical steel, and garnets that caught the high desert sun like drops of blood. This geological richness would prove both blessing and curse, drawing prospectors and miners who would transform a pristine wilderness into a battlefield of human ambition. But before I tell you about the silver rush and the wars that it spawned, you need to understand how this place got its name and the tragedy that name represents. The ghost of the Idaho Hotel's front desk clerk, or maybe it was just the current owner, hard to tell the difference in this place, once handed me a faded newspaper clipping. "You want to know about the name?" she said, her voice carrying the weight of repeated tellings. "It's written in blood." Donald Mackenzie's expedition into the Snake Country brought together a world of cultures: French Canadians who'd forgotten their homeland, displaced Iroquois seeking new hunting grounds, and several Hawaiian natives who'd sailed half the world away from their volcanic islands. These Polynesians, called Owyhee in the English tongue of the time, had joined the expedition as skilled sailors and laborers, part of the vast fur trade network that connected the Pacific to the Great Lakes. After wintering in the Boise Valley, a small party of these Hawaiians ventured southwest into uncharted territory, driven by curiosity or perhaps homesickness for landscapes that reminded them of their distant islands. Spring turned to summer. Summer faded to fall. They never returned. When Mackenzie finally searched for them, he found horror. One man murdered in camp, the others vanished without a trace into the endless canyons. The wilderness had swallowed them whole, leaving only questions and the weight of loss. In their memory, he named the vast territory Owyhee, a monument to courage and tragedy, to dreams that died in the high desert silence. Riding through the Owyhee backcountry today, following cattle trails and mining roads that wind through landscapes of impossible beauty and hidden danger, I think about those lost Hawaiians often. They were the first to give their lives to this land, but they wouldn't be the last, not by a long shot. But long before any Hawaiian sailor ever set foot in this wilderness, long before any European fur trader dreamed of Pacific fortunes, this land was home. The northern Paiute, Bannock, and Shoshone tribes had lived and thrived here for at least 13,000 years, their presence woven into every canyon, every spring, every sacred peak. When I'm riding the high ridges above the Owyhee River, I often stop and try to imagine what this place looked like through their eyes. Not empty wilderness waiting to be conquered, but a complete world, a homeland where every landmark had a name, every season brought its own gifts, every generation passed down knowledge refined over millennia. These weren't simple nomads wandering aimlessly through the desert. They were sophisticated peoples who understood this complex ecosystem better than any modern scientist, who could process wild grasses into flour, craft razor-sharp tools from volcanic glass, and thrive in a landscape that would kill most modern humans within weeks. The archaeological record tells their story in artifacts scattered across over 500 known sites. Finely crafted weapons made from local chert, obsidian, agate, and jasper, bighorn sheep and deer bones from ancient hunts, remnants of seeds and plants that sustained life, fragments of pottery and delicate clay figurines, even sandals designed for this specific terrain. When I'm camping alone in the Owyhee backcountry, my bike secured against the wind and my fire crackling against the desert night, I sometimes feel their presence, not as ghosts, but as the original inhabitants whose knowledge and wisdom were nearly erased by the violence that followed. Their descendants still consider these landscapes sacred, still draw spiritual strength from the winding rivers and abundant wildlife that continue to support tribal traditions and ceremonies. This is the foundation story that too often gets forgotten in tales of mining booms and cattle barons. This land sustained complex civilizations for 13,000 years before gold fever changed everything forever. The story of Silver City's violent birth begins in 1863, when a group of prospectors called the Jordan Party found themselves gloriously lost. Believing they were in Oregon, they stumbled on something that would transform this wilderness forever: gold glittering in Jordan Creek. Michael Jordan, not the basketball player, but the prospector whose name still graces the creek, watched as Dr. Rudd carelessly scooped up a shovel full of gravel and discovered 100 glistening colors of pure gold. When I ride through these areas today, throttling down to navigate the rocky creek crossings, I try to imagine that electrifying moment, the silence of the wilderness suddenly shattered by the realization of instant wealth. The very ground beneath my tires once sparkled with the promise of fortune, and men abandoned everything they knew to chase that glimmer.
The story of Silver City's violent birth begins in 1863, when a group of prospectors called the Jordan Party found themselves gloriously lost. Believing they were in Oregon, they stumbled upon something that would transform this wilderness forever: gold glittering in Jordan Creek. Michael Jordan, not the basketball player, but the prospector, whose name still graces the creek, watched as Dr. Rudd carelessly scooped up a shovelful of gravel and discovered 100 glistening colors of pure gold. When I ride through these areas today, throttling down to navigate the rocky creek crossings, I try to imagine that electrifying moment, the silence of the wilderness suddenly shattered by the realization of instant wealth. The very ground beneath my tires once sparkled with the promise of fortune, and men abandoned everything they knew to chase that glimmer. The pleasure mining was incredibly productive at first, but surface riches are always fleeting. Within a year, the easily accessible gold was gone. But then came what would prove to be either fortune's greatest gift or cruelest joke. Vast silver deposits were discovered in 1864. Silver City earned its name and its bloody future as a treasure chest built on shifting earth and even more volatile human ambition. The Morning Star lode, discovered in October 1863, would prove to be one of the richest silver strikes in the American West. By 1864, stamp mills were crushing ore at a rate that produced an astonishing $1 million a year. Serious money in any era, but especially in the 1860s. But it was the September 1865 discovery of the Portman mine that truly established Silver City's reputation for both incredible wealth and savage violence. The Portman story reads like a fever dream. In just 6 days of frantic surface operations using the hastiest methods, they extracted over $500,000 worth of ore, an astronomical sum for such a brief period. But claim wars halted work almost immediately, and the ensuing litigation dragged on while men died over the right to tear silver from the mountain's bones. Fabulously spectacular Portman ore specimens were displayed in the halls of Congress and won a gold medal at the Paris International Exposition in 1867, earning Owyhee international recognition as the second most important silver region in the West, trailing only Nevada's celebrated Comstock lode. This wasn't just about finding silver. It was about a single discovery that could reshape a region's global standing overnight. At its peak, this remote mountain town swelled to 2,500 residents, extracting a staggering $60 million worth of ore from the unforgiving mountain slopes. As I throttle through these same mountains today, feeling the raw power of nature around me, I can almost hear the echo of pickaxes and the shouts of men whose hands were as quick to draw weapons as they were to swing mining tools. What strikes me most about Silver City's history isn't just the wealth, it's the violence that wealth bred. These weren't genteel business disputes settled in courtrooms. This was the Wild West at its most brutal, where boom and bust cycles attracted desperate souls willing to kill for acclaim. The first major conflict erupted over the Portman mine in 1865. When claim wars shut down operations after only 6 days, the dispute escalated far beyond legal squabbling. D.C. Bryan's Portman operation had allegedly encroached on the Hayes and Ray mine's silver vein, a vein containing an incredible 80% gold and silver content. Miners built log forts above their mine entrances and shot at each other underground. The sound of gunfire echoing through tunnels
muzzle flashes illuminating rock walls, blood pooling in the darkness where men died for the right to dig silver from the earth. But that was nothing compared to the Golden Chariot versus Ida Elmore mine war of January 1868. Picture this: 100 armed men occupying underground tunnels, exchanging several thousand shots in the claustrophobic darkness. The air thick with cordite and fear, screams echoing through the depths as miners fought literally underground battles over overlapping claims. 2 men died in those tunnels, their blood seeping into the same earth they died trying to claim. The violence escalated to such a dangerous degree that the territorial governor had to send 95 soldiers armed with a cannon to restore order. Think about that, a cannon brought into a mining town to end an underground war. It took the full force of military intervention to stop miners from killing each other in the depths of the earth. When I'm riding through these trails today, particularly when I duck into the cooler shadows of the forest, I wonder about those dark tunnels still honeycombing the mountains around me. My headlight occasionally catches the mouth of an abandoned shaft, black as a wound in the mountainside. How many unrecorded deaths occurred in those depths? How many spirits are still trapped in the earth they died trying to claim? At the heart of all this turbulence stood, and still stands, the Idaho Hotel, a structure with its own remarkable journey through history. Originally built in nearby Ruby City in 1863, the entire hotel was disassembled when Silver City became the more prosperous location, then moved piece by piece and reassembled in 1866. Imagine that level of determination to preserve a good establishment, like a giant ghostly Lego set transported through mountain wilderness. I've spent many nights in the Idaho Hotel, and I could tell you it's not like staying in any modern accommodation. This isn't just any old building. After more than 150 years, the hotel serves as what locals call an indestructible dowager queen of American ghost towns. It's been named one of the top haunted hotels in the country, and when you consider its history, that reputation makes perfect sense. This building absorbed the desperation and bloodshed of the mining era into its very timbers. Walking the wooden floors after midnight, hearing every board creak and settle, you become acutely aware that these walls witnessed Silver City's most violent moments. The hotel sits at the intersection of the town's main streets, meaning every gunfight, every claim dispute, every drunken brawl played out within sight of its windows. The most infamous resident spirit is believed to be Samuel Lockhart, forever recognizable in his long riding coat. On April 1st, 1868, Lockhart was involved in a deadly shootout right outside the hotel entrance. He shot Marion Moore, one of the Ida Elmore mine owners, whose dying words were chilling. "They have stolen the mine, and now their man Lockhart has killed me." Lockhart himself suffered a crippling arm wound and reportedly offered a doctor $2,500 to amputate it, but gangrene claimed him anyway. Room 26 has become the epicenter of paranormal activity. I've stayed in that room, and I can tell you there's something deeply unsettling about it. Paranormal investigators have captured electronic voice phenomena from within, disembodied voices commanding, "Simply don't move." There's even rumored to be a tunnel entrance under the hotel leading to one of the abandoned mines, creating a literal conduit for spirits from the depths. During one particularly memorable night, I was awakened by what sounded like piano music drifting through the halls. The hotel has an 1880s piano in the lobby, its keys yellow with age, and locals swear it plays by itself some nights, phantom fingers picking out melodies from a century past. Whether it was the building settling, the wind, or something more supernatural, I couldn't say. But in the Idaho Hotel, the line between the natural and the supernatural blurs like morning mist over the mountains. While Silver City was tearing itself apart over silver claims, the greater Owyhee region was consumed by a conflict most Americans have never heard of: the Snake War of 1864 to 1868, statistically the deadliest Indian war in the American West. This brutal conflict claimed 1,762 casualties, more than twice the number killed at the infamous Battle of Little Bighorn. Yet, it remains largely forgotten because it coincided with the Civil War raging in the East. The real ghosts of Owyhee aren't just the miners who died in cave-ins or gunfights over claims. They're the indigenous peoples who fought and died for their homeland in a war overshadowed by the national conflict raging in the East. The influx of prospectors and freighters that flooded into the territory after the 1862 Boise Basin and 1863 Owyhee gold and silver discoveries served as a potent accelerant to existing tensions. This sudden massive increase in non-native presence intensified conflicts that had been simmering since the 1850s, when Hudson Bay Company closed its trading post at Fort Boise, removing a crucial point of diplomacy and leaving a power vacuum. Standing at Three Forks, where the Owyhee River splits into its tributaries, I tried to imagine the Battle of Three Forks in May 1866. Major Marshall and 84 soldiers facing 500 Paiutes across these rushing waters, the boom of cannons echoing off canyon walls. But the military reports tell only one side of the story.
What strikes me riding through this landscape is how recent all this history really is. Silver City's boom and bust, the Snake War's brutal campaigns, the cattle drives and stagecoach robberies, all of it happened within living memory of people whose grandchildren are still alive today. This isn't ancient history buried in textbooks. It's the foundation of communities that still exist, still shaped by events that unfolded in the lifetimes of great-grandparents. Today, Silver City exists in a strange limbo between past and present. About 70 original buildings still stand, including the Idaho Hotel, where I continue to spend nights listening to the buildings settle and wondering which creaks are structural and which are supernatural. The town that once housed 2,500 souls now maintains a population that rarely exceeds a few dozen year-round residents. Walking the wooden sidewalks after midnight, flashlight beam cutting through darkness thick as velvet, I feel the weight of all those vanished lives. The Chinese miner who sent his gold back to Guangzhou and never made it home himself. The dance hall girl who died of consumption in an upstairs room of the War Eagle Saloon. The Paiute children who never returned from their vision quests in the sacred canyons. The Hawaiian explorers who gave their name to this wilderness and their lives to its secrets. These aren't just stories meant to entertain or frighten. They're the genetic memory of a place that has seen too much, suffered too much, lost too much to ever completely let go of its dead. In Silver City and throughout Owyhee country, the past isn't past. It's present company, sharing space with the living few who still call this ghostly landscape home. But Owyhee country faces new challenges that would have been incomprehensible to the miners and warriors who fought over it 150 years ago. Climate change is warming this already arid landscape faster than almost any other region in the country, threatening the delicate ecosystems that survived mining booms, cattle overgrazing, and everything else humans could throw at them. New mining ventures and energy development projects eye the same mountains that gave up their silver treasures, while conservationists fight to preserve what remains of one of America's largest intact wilderness areas. As I prepare to head back down the mountain after another day exploring these haunted trails, engine cooling in the thin air while I secure my gear for the descent, I'm reminded that Silver City and places like it serve as more than tourist destinations or riding areas. They're reminders of what echoes we leave behind, what unfinished business might bind us to the places we've known. The spirits of Silver City, Lockhart in his long coat, the hotel manager in his tuxedo, the Chinese miners whose graves lie empty, the children who died too young, the indigenous warriors who fought for their homeland, the Hawaiian explorers who never saw their islands again. They all represent different kinds of earthly attachment. Some cling to the material world through violence and greed, others through love and loss, others still through duty and responsibility. When I ride these trails, following routes carved by stagecoaches and cattle drives, crossing creeks where prospectors once panned for gold, climbing ridges where Paiute warriors once made their stands, I carry all their stories with me. Not as ghost stories meant to frighten, but as human stories that remind me that every place has depth, every trail has history, and every ride is a chance to connect with something larger than the moment. The engine starts with a familiar rumble, and I begin my descent from this haunted paradise. But part of me always stays behind, drawn to return to this place where past and present intersect, where the spirits of the Old West still walk the mountain trails, and where every ride is a journey through time itself.
The Owyhee River continues to carve its way through this land of stark contrasts, carrying with it not just water, but the echoes of ancient lives, the glint of lost gold, and the whispers of unseen beings. It serves as a persistent, flowing reminder that history is not merely a collection of facts to be recited, but a living, breathing narrative shaped by countless perspectives, often overlooked, and always offering new depths to explore. Silver City, Idaho, 9,000 feet above sea level, just miles from Oregon, rich in stories, and richer still in the ghosts of those who lived them. For a dirt bike rider with a love of history, there's no better place to feel the weight of the past and the freedom of the present all at once. Owyhee country doesn't give up its ghosts easily, but for those willing to listen, to really listen, it offers something rarer than silver or gold. The truth about what it costs to carve civilization from wilderness and what remains when the civilization crumbles and the wilderness reclaims its own.